A simple woman with her old, battered rifle stepped onto the elite sniper range, and the room laughed. Her gear was outdated, her uniform unpolished, her presence so quiet it barely registered. Surrounded by high-tech scopes and swaggering legends, she looked like a relic from a forgotten war. But when she took her shot, the laughter died. Dead silence followed. In that moment, the world began to remember a name it had tried to bury. The wind swept across the open expanse of the sniper range, a subtle whisper that barely disturbed the serenity of the early morning. The sun hung low, casting long shadows across the flat earth, the mountains in the distance a majestic backdrop to the almost otherworldly silence. The sky, tinged with a soft orange hue, heralded the arrival of another day of intense training and competition, where the world's most elite marksmen came to prove their worth. The range wasn't just any ordinary place. It was a battlefield in its own right. Here, only the best would survive, and only those who possessed true skill could rise above the rest. Among the soldiers, sharpshooters, and seasoned veterans, one figure stood out, not because of any grand gesture or flair, but because of the sheer calmness that emanated from her. Lila Voss, a woman clad in dark tactical gear, knelt on the ground as she prepared her rifle for another shot. She was, in every sense, an enigma, a ghost among giants, quiet but exuding an air of quiet confidence. She didn't seem out of place in the midst of the seasoned men and women around her, but she felt out of sync with their expectations. They had no idea who she was, and that was exactly how she wanted it. Lila didn't talk much. She didn't need to. She was a sniper, a practitioner of an art few could master. Her life had always been a series of calculated moves, and as she raised her rifle, focusing on a target several hundred yards away, she was doing what she did best, surviving. The competition had begun hours ago. The other snipers, all highly trained individuals with their own stories and backgrounds, had been given the opportunity to prove themselves. The rules were simple. Hit the target and hit it cleanly. Precision was key. The difference between success and failure was often measured in millimeters. The slightest shift in wind or the most trivial miscalculation could make the difference between glory and humiliation. Yet, Lila knew something that most of them didn't. She didn't just come here to compete. She came to remind the world of her skill. She was no ordinary sniper. She wasn't just another nameless face. But for now, that knowledge remained locked inside her. The world didn't need to know who she was. Not yet. Behind her, a small crowd of onlookers had gathered, mostly fellow competitors. But some of them were staff on the range, too. All of them kept their distance, watching her with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. Most of the men had already formed their judgments before she even stepped onto the field. A woman in a sniper competition? It was almost laughable. And yet, Lila wasn't bothered by it. She had learned long ago that expectations, especially those of others, could be as dangerous as the bullets that flew from her rifle. One of the men, a grizzled, older sniper with a thick beard and a pair of weathered eyes, eyed her carefully. He was a veteran, someone who had spent years on the battlefield, taking out targets with lethal precision. His reputation preceded him. He was known as one of the top snipers in the world. His name was Captain Derek Frost. As he glanced over at Lila, a smirk crept onto his face. The arrogance that many of the male snipers carried was apparent in his posture. He watched her, trying to gauge her level of skill, but mostly he watched because he didn't believe she had any. "You're kidding me, right?" he muttered to the man beside him. "I've seen better shooters at a carnival." His companion, a younger sniper, tried to keep his voice low, but there was no mistaking the tone of disbelief in his voice. "Yeah, this doesn't seem right. She doesn't even look like she belongs here." The words stung, but Lila didn't flinch. She didn't need to. She'd heard it all before. They thought she was just another woman trying to make a name for herself in a male-dominated world. They didn't know who she really was, or what she was capable of. Lila adjusted her position slightly, her hand steady as she carefully loaded a round into the chamber of her rifle. Her eyes narrowed as she scanned the target through her scope. The target was a small, round bullseye placed almost a mile away. The wind was light, but unpredictable. She had to adjust for it. Her calculations came instinctively. Her heart beat steady as she lined up her shot. The other snipers continued to watch her, waiting for her to miss, for her to falter. After all, that's what they expected. It was almost as if they were hoping she would. They wanted to see her fail. But there was a quiet certainty in Lila's expression that made them uneasy. She inhaled slowly, her breath steady, her eyes focused. With each second, the weight of the rifle in her hands seemed to disappear. She was no longer a woman. She was a tool, an instrument of precision. She squeezed the trigger. The shot rang out across the range, a sound so precise, so deliberate, that it cut through the air like a whisper. It wasn't just the sound of a bullet being fired. It was the sound of a legacy being reaffirmed. For a brief moment, everything went silent. The world held its breath. Even the onlookers, those who had been sneering and jeering moments before, fell quiet, eyes wide. A split second later, a soft thud echoed as the bullet hit the target squarely in the center. The crowd erupted in stunned silence. The target was hit. But not just hit, perfectly hit. For a moment, no one spoke. The snipers around her exchanged glances, unsure of how to react. Lila remained still, her expression unreadable, as though the shot had been nothing more than a casual practice. She lowered her rifle slowly, her fingers loosening their grip as she exhaled, the calmness of her breath in stark contrast to the chaos that surrounded her. Captain Frost's face twisted in disbelief. His smirk faded as his eyes widened, taking an impossible precision of the shot. He had been expecting her to miss, to falter, but instead she had done the impossible. And that wasn't something he was prepared for. You hit it, the younger sniper stammered. Dead center. Lila turned slightly to him, her eyes cold but calm. Focus. Don't get distracted, she said, her voice quiet but carrying the weight of experience. Another round of shots echoed across the range, but Lila was already focused on her next target. She didn't need to prove herself to anyone. She wasn't here to win their respect. She was here to remind them that the past had a way of creeping up on the present, no matter how much they tried to forget it. As she moved to her next position, the whispers began to spread among the competitors. They began to talk, though they still spoke in hushed tones. "Who is she?" one asked. "I've never seen anyone shoot like that before." "Is she one of the old legends?" another murmured. Could she be? The question lingered in the air. Lila heard their words, but she didn't respond. She didn't need to. The truth had a way of revealing itself when the time was right. And for now, the only thing that mattered was a shot. The next one. By the time the second round of the sniper competition began, the tension on the range had shifted like a sudden gust of wind. Gone was the dismissive laughter, the careless banter. In its place was a quiet unease that settled over the camp like fog. The competitors, men who had spent years honing their skill, earning medals, names carved into the legend of sniper warfare, now watched Lila Voss with guarded curiosity and reluctant respect. No one spoke to her directly, but she could feel their eyes following her every move. She had become the anomaly they couldn't explain, an outsider who'd arrived without warning, and then with a single shot, rewrote the rules of the game. Lila moved to the next firing line, her expression as unreadable as ever. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. Her rifle, a custom .338 Lapua Magnum, scarred and worn from years in the field, rested in her hands like an extension of her body. She lay flat on her stomach, scanning the next target zone. Wind at 5 knots, cross-drift. Elevation needed a 2-click adjustment. Her fingers danced over the scope without hesitation. She wasn't just shooting. She was calculating, living in the fractions between breath and trigger. Every movement came from years of experience that couldn't be taught, only earned through pain, blood, and silence. Across the range, Captain Derek Frost watched her through his own scope, not at a target, but at her. His ego still burned from being proven wrong. But more than that, a creeping suspicion began to take root in his mind. There was something about her technique, her posture, the way she read the terrain, without even checking her instruments. It wasn't just experience. It was instinct, and it was rare, too rare. Then it hit him. Voss! he muttered under his breath, squinting through the lens. Why does that name sound familiar? He rummaged in the mental archives of every known sniper he'd read about, trained with, or heard tales of in secret circles. And then he froze. Ilara Voss, a ghost name, a myth among military black ops. She'd been known by another name, too, the Veil. A sniper so deadly, so elusive, her confirmed kills numbered in the triple digits, yet no clear photos of her ever existed. She operated in the most hostile zones, Afghanistan, Chechnya, Sudan, missions redacted, files classified. Then, years ago, she had vanished. Could it be the same person? No, he thought. Couldn't be. But doubt gnawed at him. Meanwhile, the competition continued. The second challenge was more demanding. Multiple targets, varying distances, random movement patterns. Each sniper was given 3 minutes to hit 5 targets. Lila lay still, breathing slow and steady. She fired. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Each bullet found its mark. Clean, efficient, no wasted motion. A tech officer monitoring the targets leaned back in disbelief. She just cleared the stage in under 90 seconds, he whispered. No misses. The silence that followed her performance was louder than any applause. Then came the whispers again. That's not normal. Who trained her? Did anyone verify her identity? Later, back at the base lounge, Lila stood alone by the coffee machine. She wasn't hiding, but she didn't engage either. The others had clustered in groups, whispering theories, some clearly shaken. She sipped her coffee, black and bitter, her gaze distant. That's when Frost approached her. You've got quite a shot, he said casually, but his voice was tight. Lila didn't look at him. I practice. Frost chuckled bitterly. Yeah, sure. That's what everyone says. But I know what I saw. That shot, the angle, the correction, the wind drift. You didn't guess. You knew. That kind of instinct doesn't come from just practice. It comes from war. She finally looked at him, eyes sharp. What do you want, Captain? He leaned closer. The Veil. That's who you are, aren't you? Ilara Voss. A flicker. Just a flicker in her expression. The name hit her like a stone skipping across water. But she caught it, buried it. You're mistaken, she replied evenly. My name is Lila. Frost's eyes narrowed. You could deny it all you want. But I know that look. I've seen it in the mirror. We both done things we don't talk about. Lila set her cup down and turned away. Frost didn't stop. You disappeared 5 years ago. Why come back now? What's your angle? Lila paused at the door. Her voice was low, but clear. Some ghosts come back, not to haunt others, but to remind themselves they're still alive. And with that, she walked out, leaving Frost staring into the void she left behind. That night, as others drank and celebrated or licked their wounds in solitude, Lila lay awake in her bunk. Her mind wandered back, not to the battlefield, but to the moment she decided to vanish. The last mission, the final kill. She remembered it vividly. Congo, 2018. Her team had been ambushed during a covert extraction op. 5 men dead. Her spotter, Mira, bled out beside her. They had been betrayed from the inside. She'd taken the shot that saved the extraction team, but it cost her everything. The brass called her a hero, but she had seen too much, lost too much. So she vanished, changed her name, lived quietly. Until now, this competition, wasn't about medals. It was about redemption. She needed to prove to herself that she hadn't lost it, that Myra's death hadn't broken her, that she hadn't died that day too. But fate had other plans. The next morning, a message arrived, and signed, slipped under her bunk door. You're not the only ghost here. Finish the competition. Then we talk. A friend. She stared at it for a long time. Her hands trembled just slightly. She folded the note, slid it into her jacket, and walked out. The final round was announced at noon. It was a simulation. Urban combat conditions, high wind, time pressure, multiple hostiles, including decoys. Targets would move unpredictably through a simulated war zone. This was no ordinary test of aim. It was a test of instinct under fire. As the snipers gathered, the mood had shifted entirely. Now, every eye was on Lila. Even the officials watched her like she was a variable they couldn't control. Some were impressed, others worried. But one thing was clear. Everyone knew she was no amateur. Frost leaned against a wall, chewing on the stem of a toothpick. He didn't speak to her again, but he nodded once, a nod that said, "I know who you are now." The competition began. One by one, snipers entered the simulation zone. The wind stirred again, but this time it didn't feel indifferent. It felt like something had shifted, something old and powerful, awakened by the silence that followed Commander Hale's words. "Hello, Vale. It's been a long time." The crowd didn't breathe. Even Frost looked like someone had punched the air out of him. Ilara, stood frozen, shoulders straight, jaw tight. She wasn't running anymore. The name hung in the air like a dropped weapon, undeniable and dangerous. "I'm not her anymore," she said, voice low, edged in steel. Hale's expression didn't falter. "Maybe, but the world still remembers. And now they'll come looking." Ilara glanced around. The competitors weren't mocking her now. They were in awe or afraid, or both. To them, she wasn't pure anymore. She was a legend, a living weapon wrapped in flesh. Frost stepped forward, suddenly defensive. "What's this about? Why is command here?" Hale's eyes flicked to him. "Because a new war is starting, and we need people who can end it before it begins." Lila's jaw clenched. "Not interested." Hale held up a small data chip. "You should be. Look at this and then decide." She handed it over. Ilara took it reluctantly. The chip was cold, metal biting into her calloused fingers. "What is it?" she asked. Hale's gaze was hard. Proof that Myra's death was an accident. The world narrowed to a pinpoint. Ilara felt her knees threaten to give, but she didn't move. Her fingers closed around the chip like it was the last anchor she had. "Speak," she said. Hale nodded once, the wind brushing her silver hair back. "You were betrayed, not just by intel leaks. Someone high up sold you out." Mira was silenced, because she found something she shouldn't have. "We didn't know then, but we do now. That man's still out there, still pulling strings." Ilara looked down at the chip, her breath shallow. For years, she'd buried it. The guilt, the unanswered questions. She'd let herself believe it was just the cost of war. But now? No, not anymore. She turned back to Hale. "Why me?" Hale's reply came without hesitation. "Because you're the only one who ever scared him." A silence followed, sharp, electric. Frost looked between the two women. "So what? You wanted to come back from the dead, just to take out one man?" Hale's voice dropped. "Not just one. It's a network. Deep, global. Mercenaries, warlords, former generals. They're planning something. And they've already started cleaning house." Ilara looked at the chip one more time. It felt heavier than before. "Do I work alone?" she asked. Hale smiled faintly. "At first, but others are waiting. Old ghosts. Ones who want payback as much as you." Ilara exhaled slowly. "Then I need my gear. The real gear." Hale nodded. "We never touched it. It's where you left it. In Finland. In the vault." Frost laughed once, short and stunned. "You really are her." Ilara turned to him. "You still think I'm a carnival shooter?" He raised his hands. "Nah, I think you're the reason carnivals ban rifles." Despite herself, a flicker of amusement crossed her face, but it didn't last. She turned to Hale. "I'll finish the competition. For cover. Then I'm gone." Hale stepped back, letting her pass. "We'll be watching." As Ilara walked away, the murmurs began again, but they were reverent now. Eyes followed her like she was a myth made flesh. She didn't acknowledge them. She was already somewhere else. On rooftops in jungles, through snowfields soaked in shadow and silence. That evening, she stood alone on the sniper's perch, watching the sun sink behind the mountains. The same wind brushed her face, but it no longer whispered of solitude. It whispered of war. She removed the data chip from her pocket, slipped it into the range terminal she'd hijacked. The screen flickered. Myra's voice filled the speakers. A final message. If you're seeing this, L, they found me, but I got enough. Someone on the inside is working with a private black ops firm, codename Vulture. They're planning something global, mass destabilization. They want to start a war and profit when the world burns. Her voice cracked. I knew you'd come back one day. Just promise me one thing. Make it count. The file ended. Alara didn't cry. Her heart didn't race. She simply stood. And the sniper known as the Veil was reborn. 1 month later, classified location. Darkness. Rain slashing the windows. In a command bunker beneath a mountain, red lights flashed across a global map. An operator stepped into the room, eyes wide. Sir, we've confirmed it. The man at the console didn't turn. His voice was cold. Measured. Confirmed what? The operator swallowed hard. She's back. The Veil. A long pause. Then the man leaned forward and muttered 2 words. Kill her.